Hello there, Qckslvrslash, and finally it is time for my review of the Tier 8 German battleship, the Bismarck. And what a mighty ship he is. As you can see, I've bought the permanent camo because this is just one of those ships that as a collector is never leaving my harbor, and I will always come back to because of how much fun it's been to drive. So, for anyone who's seen the turrets in-game, you can see pretty much exact same ship, which makes sense, they're sister ships. Now, the big difference you'll notice right off the bat is the Bismarck has no torpedo tubes, but she makes up for it with much better AA and some pretty astounding secondaries. So let's start digging into the stats. So as far as survivability goes, she actually takes the tier at 85, beating out, or at least equaling, everything else at tier 8. And in-game that really shows 69,200 hit points and a great armor layout, which finally I can actually show off. So as you can see, looking at her, and I've talked about it in the past about the German BBs, aiming for the waterline, there is this huge thick belt. If you go just a little bit higher, there's a thinner belt that you can get through and at least get consistent damage out of, because I at least have never really gotten citadels, especially if they're not perfectly flat on. You start putting any kind of angle in there and the shells are just going to ricochet off. So as I pull back another layer of armor, you can see really what makes up the main citadel. And the front end, you've got 180, 220, some very thick armor, a little bit thinner in the rear, but still more than respectable, and some decent torpedo bulkheads, but really, the Germans' worst in class as far as torpedo protection goes. And as you start to pull even more layers back, you can see that main citadel. So you've got a lot to get through, and that's why coming in the side, I find you're never really going to get through the 320 plus another 45, or you're ricocheting off the top on the inside of this. The turret's also massively armored, 340 mils all around, and the armor on the actual mounts is pretty substantial as well. I can only think one or two times that I've ever really lost a turret. When you strip them off, you're left with the superstructure. The conning tower, obviously really well armored. That's where everyone hides to fight the battle from, essentially. And then the rest of the superstructure, pretty standard thickness. So you've got to be careful that when you're aiming for that little belt on the top, that you're not hitting the superstructure, because if you're hitting the superstructure, you're going to overpen. So it's just this little belt of 160 that you really might have a chance of getting solid penetrations through. So overall, some great armor, and when you get into a fight, you just take a beating, and he just keeps on sailing. As far as the artillery goes, well, it's what you'd expect. These 380 mil batteries, they fire slightly faster than the bigger guns that the North Carolina and Amagi have, but they don't have the same kind of penetration. That means, though, that the Bismarck is an excellent cruiser hunter, and when you do come up against a battleship, you just have to be patient and wait for your shots. Let your secondaries just rack up damage and pick and choose when and where you are shooting. Now, moving on to the secondaries, the Bismarck has the standard layout of 105 and 150 mil secondaries that you would expect of most German vessels, but they fire out to 10.6 kilometers, which, granted, that's with a captain and then boosted, but it's absolutely amazing. And the average damage I get out of a game from my secondaries and the fires they start is easily 30 to 50,000 damage in any game that I kind of get inside that range from something and really start brawling. And I'm okay not having the torpedoes, because in the turrets, where you would close in, in some cases at least, close in, get in that 6 kilometers and really, torp an enemy battleship to just ace them quickly rather than stand off at kind of 10 kilometers. Well, in the Bismarck, you can keep your range, keep your guns firing, and those secondaries will just rack up the damage. And if you come across one of those battleship captains who the second they get lit on fire, put it out, I can guarantee you're going to get some great damage out of them. Where the Bismarck also outshines the Tirpitz is AA, a rating of 77 compared to the 53 that the Tirpitz has. It puts her on par, a little bit better than the Amagi, and just behind the North Carolina. So, unlike the Tirpitz, where I feel you kind of become a target of opportunity for especially equal and higher tier aircraft carrier captains and have to stay close to cruisers anytime there's aircraft in the game, the Bismarck, you're going to fare a little better should you get focused down by them. As far as maneuverability, great speed, 31 knots, and just overall pretty decent turning circle at 850. It's not the greatest, but at the same time, it's not bad, and with a rudder shift mod, you can get the rudder shift down to 12.8 seconds, and she's very responsive, allowing you to duck and dodge torpedoes. And that kind of comes into one of the things that really makes the Tirpitz unique among battleships, is hydroacoustic search, which we'll get to when we get into the modules. As for concealment, pretty typical of a battleship. So there is that hydroacoustic search I was talking about, and it can be a great use. The number of times that I've been in a game where, destroyer gets to about 5k, pops smoke and thinks they can just sit there and shoot at me, only to get ripped apart by my secondaries because I turn hydroacoustic on and flush them out. You're also going to get a little bit better warning as far as torpedoes, and just really useful to have. I know a lot of people kind of like poo-pooed like, oh, hydroacoustic, that's going to be useless. I really do enjoy having it, and there's been a number of games where it has saved my arse. Otherwise, pretty standard equipment. She's got a catapult fighter or a spotting plane. I choose the fighter because it helps boost an already solid AA rating, and premium repair party and damage control. As for the upgrades I've gone with main armament 1. You just want to keep all your guns in it, and really I feel it's always the best option in that spot. In slot 2, I've gone with secondary battery modification number 2 for the aforementioned 10.6 kilometer secondary range that it allows. Slot 3, damage control 1. In slot 4, I've gone for steering gear, and I really do feel that extra rudder shift combined with the hydroacoustic search is a valuable playstyle. And in spot 4, when I get the money and I have a little more floating around, I'm going to go with target acquisition system. The concealment mod may have its place, and I know people who would really pick that, but just that little bit better warning of incoming torpedoes, considering her poor torpedo abatement, definitely worth it in my mind. As for the modules, the only module you should be focusing on when you get into this ship is the second hull. As you can see, it gives you improved hit points, better survivability, better AA, better maneuverability. And personally, I don't feel the improved firing range out 21.2 is that valuable. Anyone who's watched my videos knows I like to be sub 15k with my battleships, and even closer than that most of the time. So the stock 19.3, more than adequate to play in this ship until you can get it fully upgraded. As for the propulsion, stock speed of 28.5 is more than enough to get yourself into trouble, so going for the couple extra knots you can get out of the upgraded engine off the bat, I do not feel it's worth it, which is why I would recommend to anyone in this ship that the B hull should be their primary focus when they get into it. As for the captain, you can see this is a very skilled captain. He's the guy out of my turpits, and I was waiting. I knew the German line would be here eventually, and I had this guy trained up and ready. So at Tier 1, I've gone with basic fire training to further assist my AA and secondary fire. Tier 2, I initially went with expert marksman, and then as I've been getting more points, I've backfilled with fire prevention. At Tier 3, my first choice was superintendent, and then also backfilling with high alert, and at Tier 4, advanced fire training to push that AA and secondary range out to that great 10.6 range. At some point here, I am going to retrain the captain and give manual fire control for secondaries. I haven't yet though, and it's really going to be an experiment because being able to shoot at multiple targets at once with those secondaries when you really get surrounded, you lose that when you put this mod on. Yes, you're more accurate, much more accurate on single targets. You have to remember to target something all the time, and in situations where you're outnumbered and running with a lot of things closing in on you, just having them shoot at one ship sometimes can hurt you a little bit. But I'm going to give it a go, and you'll probably see another video at some point where I talk about my feelings on manual fire control in the Bismarck. But that's enough talking import. It is time to get into some gameplay. So we joined this first game just 7 minutes in. I skipped through the whole part where basically I drove up the right side of the map and no enemies showed up. Their whole team seems to have fallen back to their own base, and the reason I picked this game isn't because it was the best game I've had, but it's one of those games where I'm small tier. As you can see, tier 10 carriers, tier 10 battleships, and some tier 9 and 10 destroyers and cruisers. So this really gives, I think, a picture of how she performs against some of those bigger targets. And already I've been engaging with a Montana. I've managed to do a couple thousand damage to them, and that's about all they've managed to do to me as well. Partly because of my maneuvering. With that rudder shift you can turn, I think, much quicker than most battleship captains expect you to. And at these 15+ kilometer ranges, you can't really predict for that, and the shell's flight time is just too long to catch someone trying to turn. Like once you get into about 10k, if you lead properly, it doesn't matter if they start a turn or not, you're going to be hitting them because the ship still travels through the same space. So right now, my team's got a pretty good lead. We're already up 5 ships to 2, and we've pushed them into one corner of the map. Their whole team now is basically stuck in this little section of the map, which sometimes can be very deadly, but can also prove very beneficial. And really what you have to do when you do corral a team like this is you have to continue to push into them. If you let them group up and then try to come at them one at a time, they're going to rip you to pieces. And as I was talking about that, you can see I just got a Citadel into that Montana. And at the outer range of these guns, those plunging shells, you're going to get shots into enemy battleships. And at close range, you're going to do excellent against enemy battleships. It's in the mid-ranges that these guns underperform a little bit compared to, say, the North Carolina or a Moggy, because they're just smaller shells, so they don't deal with the angled armor quite as well. So my plan right now, push straight into their base, just get into their face, and really start trying to rip them apart. And I've got to give props to our midway driver because they did a great job neutralizing that enemy carrier. You can see our midway has 3 kills, their carrier's got 1, and a game like this with a number of tier 8s in it is candy for carrier drivers because they can basically fly in at you without losing a single plane and drop at very close proximity. I'd also like to just take a moment while we're sitting here in the Cyclone with nothing to shoot at and just really talk about one of the things I enjoyed about this game is everyone was talking in chat. No one was really being a dick. We had a guy go AFK and we kind of went, hey, where'd he go? And he's like, sorry, had to answer the door. No one yelled at him for it. They just kind of went, oh, okay, well, welcome back. And it might have been a different case had we been losing significantly and missing a battleship could have made the difference. But ultimately, people have reasons that they have to step away. There's no need to be a dick. And just stay polite in chat and act as a team, and you're going to have games like this where you just walk all over an enemy team. As we are. And it's because they really are not coordinating, and you're going to see that come up right here in about a minute when I really start getting to rip into some ships. And you can see we've grouped up into a nice compact unit, 3 battleships, a cruiser, 2 destroyers, and we're going to get to shoot at their battleships one at a time as they slowly come at us. Put a nice 10,000 damage into that Tirpitz, and this is really where that being side on, you can see I'm not getting citadels, but I'm getting solid hits because I'm putting the shells into the right spot. I also know that that Tirpitz is inside 6 kilometers, so they very well put torps in the water at me or my friendly Tirpitz. So you're going to see that in a second here I activate hydroacoustic just to make sure that we don't get hit by any surprise torpedoes. And that's already one ship down, and they're just going to keep coming at us one at a time. And I'm really going to start stacking the damage on. I didn't do much for about 10 minutes of this game, and already I'm up to 50,000 damage. You can see my Secondaries absolutely blazing away at both that North Carolina and their Montana when it was spotted temporarily. And I just love the Secondaries on this ship. Getting consistent hits out of them, got the fire already, and I used 2 of my guns to finish off the Tirpitz, and then I switched to the Montana. And here's one of those moments that I'm going to be patient, and you have to be in the Bismarck and German battleships, because at least till 9 and 10 their guns are smaller. I'm waiting for this Montana to be truly broadside on, and then I fire, get 1 citadel with my rear guns, fire the front guns off, get another citadel and the kill. And if you can be patient and do that, these guns work just fine. Anyone saying they're garbage just isn't playing the ship right. And you can see even with all those planes flying over me, didn't get a single one in that bit. And thankfully I had a friendly carrier paying attention, supporting me. Both my main guns and secondaries continue to go to work on this Bismarck, and he's about to get wrecked. So at this point, it's just their midway left, and as view range increases, you'll see that I once again get detected. And what that tells me is somewhere in this giant circle is where their carrier is, and we know he's not back here because they would be spotted, and can't be anywhere down here because the islands were blocking it, so they're somewhere in this corner of the map. And I'm just going to close in and try to get a little extra damage out of this ship before the game ends. And you'll see at this 13-kilometer range, the inaccuracy of the guns does not bite you at all. And really, that's why I never really go for that range mod. It just doesn't help me with my playstyle enough. Others of you may need it and love it, but it's not for me, and I don't think many people will miss it in this ship. And that's the type of game I feel the Bismarck can have when you're kind of the small ship. 393,000 credits, 11,000 XP, granted 200% bonus for the win, 2,300 free XP, 139,000 damage, 53 shells, 78 secondaries, 5 citadels, and ultimately, despite the slow start, really felt I had an impact, and you can see I was near the top of the team. Our midway did a great job shutting down that enemy carrier, and I didn't really get to see what the Montana was up to since we were on opposite side of the maps, but clearly he did some great work too and really wiped out about half of the enemy carrier's planes. And you can see the damage. I did 45,000 to that Montana with 2 citadels. When you're in close like that, side on, the guns still do amazing work. You know, at range I wasn't getting a lot of damage on the Montana, but he wasn't really getting much done to me either. 12,000 to that North Carolina. I snuck a citadel into that Hawkaroo at the end. Another 27,000 to that Tirpitz. 20k to the Bismarck. Even managed to shoot that Kagero once. And this was a pretty slow game for my secondaries, all told. Only 10,000 damage. I find most games, if I manage to get into it and really start mixing it up with some other people, my secondaries with the fires they light typically combine for almost 30,000 damage just on their own. And as far as credits, after everything, still made 285,000 credits, and, you know, half that XP is from my modifiers, but still a great base amount for the game. So now we'll go on to another game where things turn out a little bit differently. And for this second video, we're watching this one right through because this, honestly, I believe is one of, if not my best damage game in World of Warships yet. I tend to manage those 100 to 150k damage games, maybe once or twice a game, or not a game, once or twice a day while I'm playing, but it's rare for me to ever get up to the 200k mark, and in this game I surpassed that. And it's part of what has really made the Bismarck one of my favorite ships to drive of late, and definitely my favorite Tier 8 battleship. I really like the North Carolina, and there's going to be situations I'd prefer to be driving it, but as far as an all-round ship, I feel the Bismarck is superior. So we're playing on North, and you can see our team is doing the good old split up, which I don't like. I would prefer that maybe we chose to go A and B as a group, rather than, you know, half the team to C and D and then a group of us to A. But I'm going to make sure that I carry my weight. I'm not afraid in the Bismarck to push out in front because I'm just not as afraid of destroyers. The second I get spotted and feel it's a DD spotting me, I pop hydroacoustic and I get that early warning on the torpedoes. In this case, I know their only DD is over at C, so I can pretty much bull rush right into A, not really fearing anything on their team. In this game, I am top tier, and when you are, this ship just walks away with the game.
Katapultjäger in der Luft.
And see me trying to pick between that Tirpitz Victor Henry and the Bayern, and despite being an occluded shot, I decide to go for the Tirpitz because he's a bigger, meaner ship, and damage to him I feel is more important. You have to get rid of those top tier ships, just as in tanks. You gotta get rid of the top tier tanks early on, especially if you are top tier as well. Was trying to line up a shot on the Atlanta, unfortunately end up getting obscured by the land before I can get it off. So next up is this New Orleans, who looks like he's disconnected, loaded into the game, drove, and you know what? He's not, because his guns are firing. He very well have been a bot. And you know what? Looking back, I do not feel bad about putting 2 Citadels into a bot, or someone who's, you know, stupid enough to just drive out, side on, stop, and just sit there trying to shoot. I don't really know what he was thinking. You can see that great 24-second reload of the Bismarck really allowing me to engage many targets, and just, you gotta make sure though that every single time they're reloaded, you've thought about what you want to shoot next. Because if you're not doing that, then your advantage over other battleships starts to drop off, because, you know, you're restricting yourself down to a poor fire rate. There are times to hold fire and wait for a good shot when you can see someone turning, but as you can see, I'm having no problem putting penetrating shots into that Nagato, eating him apart. And it's right here that maybe I get a little over aggressive, but I'm feeling good. Shells are going where I've been aiming, and I'm trying to get into secondary range. You can see shots going at that Tirpitz in the North Carolina. I get lit on fire, and I really should have been using my first repair party already. Unfortunately, wasn't paying enough attention, and it's going to take me a couple seconds to notice, and it's really when I get lit on fire for the second time. And things aren't looking good for me, but just look at how much is shooting at me and how well I'm taking that damage. Got a North Carolina side on, and these are the shots you cannot miss, and unfortunately I did. Only got about 5,000 damage out of that. Should have been more. I should have taken time to aim a little more carefully and made him pay for giving me that side. And with my second volley, I do just that, landing a Citadel into turret number 2, and bringing them down to similar hit points as me. And just look at those secondaries. You know, I've got the group firing at the North Carolina, and another set firing off at that Atlanta. And that's why I don't really want to take that tier 5 skill just yet, because getting shots at multiple targets has really helped. I get another Citadel into that North Carolina, and he was just sailing broadside on. And I have to thank our Mahan for that, because the North Carolina couldn't afford to turn because of all those torps and the threat they posed if he had, which allowed me to put multiple Citadels in there. And those are kind of little things that you can do when driving a destroyer that really help your battleship drivers out. Sometimes it's not about getting the perfect torpedo shot. Sometimes it's just about funneling a ship in a certain direction so that the rest of your team can put in damage. And sadly, it won't show on the results screen, but you're going to get guys who appreciate your play and what you're doing for them and enabling them to do. So next up, I set my sights on that Prince Eugen 15-kilometer shot and end up missing it. You can see I've slowly been working through those repair parties because so much of my damage was light and medium damage, because they're just not getting into critical parts of the ship. You're really able to cycle through and recover a lot of the damage you're taking. And I just find that often isn't the case in, say, the Japanese ship, the Amagi. Quite often, a large portion of my damage is heavy damage, and I just don't feel I get the opportunity to really recover it. Secondaries start firing at the Atlanta, and they're hitting him about as hard as he is hitting me. And that's just one of those things I've really come to enjoy about this ship. I get a nice citadel in, and at this point, I can just let those secondaries go to work. And I do believe in a second here they're going to finish them off. And you can see I'm holding my fire because I wanted that close quarter expert. And with the amount of shells I was raining down on him, I knew one would connect eventually. So looking at the overall game, you can see a huge chunk of their team has now come over to this western edge of the map, but they're not pushing into A. They were busy chasing that Mayhan, and it really took them out of the fight. We captured the eastern flank. They only managed to get B. We're well ahead on points, and we're also way ahead. Well, not way ahead, but we are ahead on kills, as I put a citadel into the front of that Tirpitz, and that's a pretty rare occurrence on these ships just because of how well armored the bow structure is, and really that wasn't me doing anything special, that was just lucky RNG. And sadly, this flank is starting to fall apart, and I'm starting to look just a little bit more alone. And I'm gonna focus down this Miyoko, because lighting me on fire, he can do some devastating work to me, and my shells will penetrate him reliably regardless of the angle of his hull. I use my final repair party, and at this point I've gone through more than one ship's worth of health already, and you can still see I've got about a third of my hit points left, a little bit more. Just got Confederate there. My secondary is shooting at the Miyoko as I go back to focusing on the Tirpitz. And most of the reason for switching targets there is I just didn't feel I could give the Tirpitz my side so that I could get all my guns onto the Miyoko. And the Tirpitz is insisting on giving me broadside of his ship. Get a solid hit out of those first two batteries, hoping for a little more out of the second ones, and doesn't happen. But you can see my friendly Atlanta starting to just rain HE down on him, so hopefully he sinks pretty quickly. I get a penetrating shot there for no damage, and then another one for 1900 and 1600, and that Tirpitz is done. I put out the fires that the Miyoko's lit. I put up my plane because why not? and start firing at the Miyoko. One of the first shells over penetrates part of his, looks like bow. And once again, the secondary is just going to work. They just get another fire. I'm already up to 7 fires now. And I haven't fired a shell of HE. And, well, I think I fire here. I really didn't need to. Between the fire and my secondaries, I could have gotten another close quarters. And of course, because of RNG rules, when he's got no hit points left, that's when you get the Citadel. So you can see the other team has managed to actually pull ahead on kills, but because they spent so much time chasing one of our destroyers, they're just not gonna win this game. That Prince Eugen stops and starts going to stern, which really makes him just an easier target for me. You know, I find the German cruisers can be a little tricky to hit when they're going full speed because they've got a very low waterline comparatively when you think about something like the Mogami that might as well be the size, well, it is the size of a battleship. Get a Citadel into that Prince Eugen, and the Bayern ends up finishing me off, ending what, up to that point, an absolutely stunning game for me. And I really think that I helped carry it, and it's really thanks to this ship. You can see just shy of 100 secondary shells, 7 fires, high caliber Confederate in close quarters. This ship just consistently does that, and it's why I adore the Bismarck, and you're going to see plenty more games in the future. And that is just the kind of game that the Bismarck has been providing me. 532,000 credits, 16,000 experience. Granted, that is with a 200% win for the 1-year anniversary of Warships. 3,200 free XP, close quarter, Confederate high caliber, 210,000 damage, 55 shells, only 2 kills, but 8 Citadels. I basically locked down that cap, and 99 hits from the secondaries. And this really isn't the best game to demonstrate what those secondaries can do because I was keeping myself at range, but they absolutely devastate things when you get into a cluster of ships. 2,672 base experience, top of the team by over 1,000. And just look at the damage I was doing to ships. 25,000 to Atlanta, 13,000 to a Miyoko, 62,000 to a North Carolina, another 34,000 to a Tirpitz, 28,000, and so on and so forth. And when you look at it even now, 20,000 of that, plus another 10,000, so really almost 30,000 of that damage was my secondaries firing and lighting fires, and that is why I love the Bismarck for its long-range secondary fire. And when you get in those games with aircraft carriers, it rips apart those squadrons coming at you. All said and told, walked away with 370,000 credits and 16,000 experience, 18,000 for an already incredibly skilled commander. And that is really the one thing. This has a very skilled commander in it. And that commander is going to stay in my Bismarck. I'm going to make a new commander that's going to carry on for tiers 9 and 10. If you enjoyed this video, found it informative, please give me the thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you aren't a subscriber. I'm working towards 250 now is going to be my next kind of mark. I just gave away a Smith and some doubloons for my 100 subscriber mark, and you know, seeing those likes, seeing those subscriptions really motivate me to continue on, as do just seeing comments. You know, I like seeing what people like, what they dislike, and just, you know, maybe things they want to see because they don't really know, or would like to see my opinion on it. All of that helps me formulate what I need to do in videos and keeps me pumping these out daily. As always, I'm going to have another video for you guys tomorrow, and I'm Qckslvrslash.